Wake up, Detroit. I'm Joanne Watson, and this is your wake-up call.
When a brown girl child is born, the earth shifts. The sun is at half-mast. The moon waits for her first cry. The ancestors set the table. The flowers turn red as blood. This is your land, continent daughter, with tree trunk legs and branches for arms. This is your soil, black and fertile as your eyes facing an apartheid Jim Crow current past memory. Some of us begin the removal of shackles at birth. We grow into the armor of struggle quickly. We brew courage in our tea, blend bravery into our Sunday dinners. Joanne Watson, you understand nation building is not a part-time job. This dedicated life is sometimes lonely, a vulnerable choice, but it is the only way you know how to operate. You are wired for the movement in your black women bones, even when tired, still fighting, still organizing, still singing morning spirituals. You were born to lead, even in your own family, the eldest of 10 children born to Jefferson and Lestine. You made Damon, Nefertari, Stephen, Maya. Her children always knew she was larger than life. When you are a woman in the movement, you take the children with you on the journey. You bring the babies with you to your college classes. When you travel to Ghana for the first time, it will be with your daughters in tow. When you are a fearless, nationalist thinking mama, mothering never stops with your own babies. 30 godchildren and mentees across the globe. The daughter of a ministering mother is already ordained for good trouble. A seer, a prophetic young student preparing for her lifelong role as servant to her own community. When your purse was snatched in a Farmer Jack parking lot many years ago with your kids' tickets to Run DMC in the purse, you made sure they still got to that concert and even hosted Melly Mel and the Furious Five in your living room, because queens make it look easy. When you were a single mom, people would tell you what you can't do. Instead, you moved to New York City with all 4 of your C's to do your necessary work with the YWCA, because queens make it look easy. Ghana, Togo, South Africa, where is your heart, Mama Watson? Nurturing spirit, baking melt in your mouth, homemade biscuits. How many hours do you sleep, Warrior Watson, with endless work ethic and blue-collar blood racing through your veins? How do we say thank you for your work, your time, your heart? We know you will never really retire. There is a fire on the path to freedom. There is smoke, there is sacrifice. There are stories of justice, of women, of Tubman, Sojourner, of Angela, Asada, Coretta, and Merle, and Betty, and Queen Mother Moore. Some of us know we are ancient, that our marrow is laced with legacy, that we are here to bring light to our daughters. Sometimes it just takes one woman, a mother, a grandmother, a Spitfire, griot, a sister, the only woman to lead the NAACP's largest chapter. She, daughter of the movement, of Rosa, of Irma. She was a birth that gave birth to possibility for other young activists like me, a true D woman, frontline Fatima, Nigerian blood, councilwoman, leader, truth teller, Joanne Watson, social worker, president of the Anti-Klan Network, sister, inspiration, dedicated to the protection of girls and the voices of women wrapped in West African beauty, regal and resilient. Wake up, Detroit. Wake up, South Africa. Wake up, Cuba. Wake up, small business owners. Wake up, White House. Wake up, reparations. Wake up, teachers. Wake up, women. Wake up, schools. Sleeping is not an option when the Honorable Joanne Watson is in the room.
Wake up, Detroit. I'm Joanne Watson. This is the day the Lord has made. We rejoice, hallelujah, and we're glad in it. We're so glad to have Dr. Claude Anderson in the house. Dr. Claude Anderson, good morning.
Good morning to you, Joanne. This is your only friend for 40 years, and I'm still in love with you after all that time. So you must be a very special person.
I don't care what you say. You in love with your wife, Joanne, another Joanne. Praise God. We're grateful to have the son of Detroit, Wayne State University. He's a PhD. He was a part of the leadership of bringing affirmative action to this country. He worked for the governor of Florida. He has been one of those key executives who advise the United States of America on affirmative action policies. He's the author of Black Labor, White Wealth, Powernomics, Dirty Little Secrets, and his brand new book. Tell them the title, Claude, and let them know how they can get it.
It's called The Black Reader, 101 Questions That You Never Thought to Ask. It is a capstone for all the books I've written to tell black folk we're in serious trouble and how to look at it, read it, understand it, and get the hell out of it.
And one of the things you've said in every book, Dr. Claude Anderson, is that black people do not have a stake in the economic empowerment in this country. In fact, we are pawns. We are allowing ourselves to be used, and we're not owning like we ought to own. And you have made that abundantly clear in all of your books. We want people to know that they can go to that website and have access to all of your publications. How can they do that, Dr. Claude Anderson?
Joe, they can simply just go to the computer and go to powernomics.com, and they can order all those books over the internet, and they can prepay through PayPal and buy the books there. And currently there's a special going on. They can get all 5 of those classic best-selling books, and those are the best-selling books around the world for black folk. They can get all 5 of them plus a DVD for $99, and those books have set all kind of records in the Guinness Books of Records, where typically a book has about a 3 or 4 month shelf life. The first book, Black Labor, that everybody calls the second Bible around the world, has been a bestseller now for over 25 years.
Come on, somebody.
And no books in the history of this nation, white or black, has been able to compete with the shelf life, the long life of my books. And that's throughout Europe, through America, and into Africa.
My.
And so they can get these books by getting them either the solution pack for $65 for only 3 of the books, and get all 5 of the books plus a DVD for $99. And that way they cannot say that they don't understand the issues, nor do they understand the solutions.
And here we are in 2018, and we still only own a little over 1% of the businesses in our communities. What a disgrace.
It's an absolute disgrace, and it's an insult to our heritage.
Yes.
Black folk have been in this country. The oldest population, Joe, the oldest population in America is black folk.
Come on, somebody. Come on now.
99% of all the black people in America are the direct descendants of slaves, which means they were here in this country before 99% of all the other people arrived. For all the Hispanics, the Asians, the Europeans, the whites, anybody. Black folk are the oldest population. They're the most patriotic people. And yet they still locked into the bottom into an underclass structure, and
we don't have to be an underclass. We don't have to accept that. What we need to do is own. We need to see ourselves as empowered, as owners, and not resign ourselves to just having a job somewhere working for somebody else.
But see, Joe, you're about the only person that seems to understand that in that whole darn city. See, when I was a kid growing up in Detroit, Michigan, Detroit was a mecca for black consciousness and commitment and black activism. I don't understand it. And see, right now, Detroit, Michigan, and across this land, black folk remind me very much of what happened in Korea and during the war, in our Korean War. See, black folk in America and in Detroit don't understand one very simple premise, that the institutionalized enslavement of black folk in this country around the world, that was a declaration of war against black folks.
That's right. Well, you know what? One of our leaders, Dr. Mario Bedelli, who was also known for a period as Richard Henry, a founder of the Republic of New Africa, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this month, he always said that we are political prisoners. We were kidnapped at gunpoint, and when you're a prisoner of war, you ought not be acting like you identify with your oppressor. That's what he said.
Well, see, that's why, Joe, it reminds me very much of Korea. See, I was in Korea, North Korea, in Kimpo Valley. I was in the Marine Attack Squadron. And one of the things that I learned over there at that time was black folk in the country now have the same identical attitude that a lot of our soldiers had. They failed to understand that in Korea, they were at war with the North Koreans and with China. And almost every morning, about 7 o'clock, about the time we were talking right now, about 7 or 7:30 in the morning, the North Koreans and the Chinese would come running over the hills, shooting their guns and shooting missiles at us, at our forces, and saying directly through megaphones, "We're here, we're coming to get you, we're going to kill you." And do you know, Joe, that even a lot of our soldiers failed to understand why they were in Korea? What was the purpose? They were there to defend themselves and push back for themselves and for their country. So we had a lot of soldiers. We had a lot of soldiers. You can walk around and find them hiding in a ditch or behind a tree. And you would say, and that's what they'd be doing. They'd be laying on their guns. And you would say, "They're coming here to kill you. Why don't you get up and shoot back? You got a gun instead of laying on it." And a lot of them would say, "Well, Dr. Anderson, if I did that, that would only make them mad." And if I started shooting back at them. And so a lot of them they laid there, and we wound up with over 7,000 POWs, Americans being prisoners of war in POW camps in North Korea and in China. And out of 7,000 that were POWs, after they were kept in captivity for 3 years, and during the course of that time, over 3,000 died, Joe.
My Lord.
They died for no biological or physical reason.
My Lord.
They died for what's happening.
When you consider the prisoner of war concept, it's important that our people understand that we weren't waving our hands on the west coast of Africa, asking somebody to come get us. In fact, civilization began on the motherland. Civilization began in Africa. That's where the first colleges were, the first scientists, the first architects, the first archaeologists, the first musicians. When you consider the birthplace of humanity, the birthplace of humankind, and occurring on the continent of Africa, we need to have a completely different perspective on how we operate. We're so grateful to Dr. Claude Anderson. We thank you for this opportunity just to rise and shine and give God all the praise. Only God is worthy to be praised. I want to remind you that on this evening at 7 o'clock, there will be a very special empowerment, a task force taking place at the Greater St. Matthew's Baptist Church, led by our wonderful Reverend D. Alexander Bullock. And that will be happening this evening, and he was our guest last week, so you need to be a part of that economic empowerment. There's nobody who's talked about economic empowerment more than Dr. Claude Anderson, who's our very special guest on today. And Dr. Claude Anderson, your name gets called by millennials. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and some young people, 20-something, 30-something, were saying there's only one person we respect in this country that understands the economic and condition of black folks, and that's Dr. Claude Anderson. So we led the applause for you. Weren't even here, Claude, to know that the millennials, they may not know you personally, but they know your legacy.
Well, I'm very proud and glad and delighted to hear that, Joe, because blacks say that to me all over this country and also in Canada and in Europe and in the islands. But it's frightening to me to find that we have such a total absence of black leadership in the country.
My Lord.
And when you're one of the outstanding models we've got, you've got the last remnants we even have in Detroit. Most of our black leadership has abandoned us and given in and surrendered, like I told you about in Korea. They surrendered and gave up and decided to join the appealing forces. And they say they'd rather be a prisoner in North Korea. And the same thing in the civil rights, when they joined the civil rights movement and said, I'd rather be a captive in America to the dominant society in general and to the massive, unending influx of immigrants that are pouring into this country.
Now look what's happening in Austin, Texas. Do you know that they're down there targeting blacks and Latinos in Austin, Texas?
Yes, and you see no pushback from your black leadership in the country. Even the entire immigration issue itself, that is unconstitutional and illegal for you to continue to bring in all these immigrants in this country over black folk.
What will it take for black people to understand that they have a right to demand reparations, Dr. Anderson?
Because it's overcoming stupidity and imposed ignorance and intellectual laziness and the ability to betray and sell out their own people. They got to come over all three of those barriers, Joe.
Now, you have filed a lawsuit for years demanding that Africans in America, black folks, get treated with the same respect this country has afforded Native and indigenous people, and you've taken it all the way to the federal courthouse. We want to applaud you, but you've used your own money, your own leadership, hired your own attorneys. Dr. Claude Anderson has stood flat-footed and demanded at the highest courts of the land that black people have a right to get the same land and the same resources that have been afforded others.
Right. Thank you, Joe, for that. As a matter of fact, we're still in the federal appeals court right now. I've been in the federal claims court, the federal Sixth Circuit Court, and petition the Supreme Court. But I just got a notice this past week that I'm still, even though I'm still in the same court, that some of our people, the people playing the lead point, the point of the spear in my suits, they just received certification and notification that they've now been accepted and being qualified for benefits through the freedom as black Indians.
Praise God.
And see, they owe us billions of dollars.
Yes.
And yet they prefer to give benefits to the descendants of slaveholding Indians. People don't know that the Indians own in proportional terms, Joe, as many slaves as whites did. They fought blacks. They were slave traders, slave holders, and fought with the South to maintain slavery. But this country prefers to give them benefits even though they made no substantive direct contribution to the development of this country, other than the fact they lost the land. But black folk were the engines that drove economic development across this country. They were the ones that built everything. They were the building class.
This country gave millions of, actually billions of dollars of land and resources and money capital to the Confederate Army that waged war against the United States of America. They got reparations after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Our people don't know that the people that lost the war, that lost the Civil War, received reparations to compensate them for their, quote, losses. That was the freedom of Africans.
As a matter of fact, Andrew Johnson, when the blacks didn't get the 40 acres and a mule because Andrew Johnson came in and said, well, no, we're going to give all that land back to the Southerners.
That's right. That's exactly what happened. And the notion that the Civil War should have resolved everything, it did not, because the Civil War negotiations included the Freedmen's Bank, included the 40 acres. The mule was never in there, but 40 acres was. It included access to economic investment and included things that never happened because Lincoln was assassinated for that reason. And Johnson took the federal troops that had been assigned to protect Africans, the newly freed Africans who had been enslaved. He pulled the protection, military protection, off them, which left them open to Ku Klux Klan and all level of absolute terror.
You're absolutely right, and it's still going on. As a matter of fact, the first terrorists in America were the Southern states, Southern Confederacy.
That's right.
And that's why you see in all these elections right now that those red states in every election, our people can't even figure that out. Those red states are still the Southern states. If they promised one day that they will rise again. And see, the entire thing that put Trump in the office, the Electoral College. The Electoral College that came in the Missouri Compromise in the 1830s, which says that basically that the Southern states will should have an option on how to retain power over the Southern states and over these black folk in America. That's what the Electoral College is about. And that's how Donald Trump won the election this past time, and that's why he's sitting in office.
And if you really understand that the so-called Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the United States, was paid for by profits from the slave trade. That's the unpaid labor of our ancestors. That's right. Because France wanted to recoup its losses since Toussaint Louverture beat the heck out of Napoleon in Haiti. And
well, you're right, Joe. And what we're using this morning, you're right on target. This morning, see, and how reparations, funds from slavery was used to empower and enrich the dominant white society.
That's exactly right.
See, that all the television stations, radio stations, even the cable system, most of the money that accrued from slavery was like U.S. Steel and the rest of it, and J.P. Morgan. They didn't even have to buy some of them. They got the biggest radio stations across the nation, and the TV stations, the government gave them to them.
That's right.
They didn't pay for them.
And when you... The process of just giving the Homestead Act was nothing but reparations for white males, European males in this country, unearned, undeserved land that had already been deeded to Native and Indigenous people. They just took it because they could. Right.
Well, see, the whole American dream that you heard Obama always talking about, lauding the American dream. With the American dream, he never told people that the American dream was structured on the backs of black folk. The American dream was that the country started in 1790 with the first nationalization and immigration law. They went all around the world, saying that invited anybody around the world to come to America, as long as they can be classified, appear to be white, they can get free land and any forms of rights and privileges.
And that's what the Homestead Act is all about. And our people don't know our history and need to know it. They don't know that the North was losing the Civil War until Frederick Douglass negotiated the engagement of black men, brave, courageous black men who had been enslaved, when they joined the Union Army. That's when the tide turned and the Union Army began to move toward victory. The North was losing. The United States as a government was falling asunder. Were it not for black men and some brave black women like Harriet Tubman, who was a scout for the Union Army, even though she had a price on her head because of the Underground Railroad. Our people need to know our history. We need to know who we are. We need to stand up and fight, because it's not about waiting for somebody to do the right thing. We are prisoners of war, and we need to recognize our position in our history.
Well, you're right, and further about the North, and please have no confidence in the North, because on the eve of the Civil War, Joe, in 1860, a national survey showed that 98% of all the white people in America were totally, absolutely opposed to blacks being freed from slavery. That was a national survey. Now, and after the Civil War ended, when the reason the South rose again and subjected black folks, where they take black folks out again, take over the land, and again put blacks into slavery, what they call Jim Crow semi-slavery for another 100 years.
That's right.
Was because the North cut a deal with the South, saying as far as we're concerned, all we want to do was destroy the strong arms and the institution of the South that were controlling most of the wealth building in the country coming out of blacks.
Well, one of the things that is still going on today, the Africans who had been enslaved in the South were being counted. At least 3/5 of them were being counted, and that was determining the congressional representation in the South.
Well, right. Well, that was a part of that Missouri
And right now, those persons who are housed in the nation's prisons, and right now the United States has more people in prison than any other country in the world, more than anybody else. The population of the prisons are being counted in these suburban enclaves that are holding the prisoners all over the country. They can't vote, they can't engage, they're not receiving any real compensation, and they're doing slave labor because these prisons are now on the stock market, Corrections Corporations of America. So we're back to enslavement and putting shackles on black men.
Right, and a model example of what's going to happen all over America is right there in Detroit where you are. And you tried to put up some kind of a limiting barrier back when I was working with you, when you were trying to build your city and your culture right there in the city of Detroit. And black folks failed to understand because they got sold out by a city council that was ruled by about 4 or 5 Sambos on the city council.
Oh, help me, somebody. Help me, Holy Ghost.
And see, they sold them out, and those people are still walking around Detroit bragging and boasting about how they.
Well, some of them 6 feet under, Claus. Everybody didn't survive that. You know, the Lord always has His way.
Says, if you can't say something good about somebody who's gone, don't say anything at all. So I'm saying, yeah, it's good they're gone.
My. I want our listeners, our viewers, I want the people of Detroit to once again sink their teeth into Dr. Claude Anderson's publications. He just talked about how you can get all 5 of his nationally recognized, renowned publications for $99. There's a special going on right now, and you can reach Dr. Anderson through his website. We want you to reach out to him and really not just about him. It's about lifting up yourself, lift up your family, lift up your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors. How can we, as a Detroit that likes to brag about being the home of the Shrine of the Black Madonna and the Nation of Islam and the 20-year tenure of the Honorable Coleman Alexander Young, the blackest black city in America, how can we, with our history, be satisfied with an apartheid economic situation in the city of Detroit? We should not accept it. We should not condone it. We should not look the other way. We need to read today. Order it today. And if you read it 20 years ago, read it again. Read it again. Read it out. Give it as gifts to your children and to your sisters and your brothers, because we need a wake-up call.
Well, and you're about the best wake-up call in that city, Joe. And black folks still don't understand that even we should all be engaging in politics at some level. But they must understand that the basic premise of politics is based on quid pro quo, something for something. One hand wants the other. You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Have mercy.
But in politics, it means if I vote you into office, you owe me. We're a nation of representative government, which means those in politics are supposed to represent the people who put them there. That's what they swear an oath on the Bible say. I promise to swear on this Bible, Holy Bible, that I will protect and serve those people who put me in office. And I come to a city like Detroit, and besides a few people like you and Rose and Kwame, they had no commitment to do anything for them. They violated their oath of office. They violated the basic premise of politics. They did nothing and absolutely nothing for black folk. And that's why black folk are in a ditch in Detroit and across this country. Economics, politics will never be effective unless you have an economy beneath it.
That's right.
And that's what you were trying to build in Africa now. And even though I was trying to build that black business district on the west side, where I had 40 acres, and the blacks on the city council, other than yourself and 2 or 3 others, they sold us out. We would have had a black town. I I had something like about 20.
Well, you know, I can't give up,
corporations.
Claude. As long as I'm here, we got to keep fighting for it. We must. We must, because it is.
That's
Nobody's
what
going to
concerned right now,
save
because
us. Nobody's going to save us but us. And if we don't wake up while there's still time, then what kind of inheritance, what kind of heritage will we leave our children and our grandchildren? We thank God for a leader, a magnificent man for such a time as this, is Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson, and we love him. He's an author, Black Labor, White Wealth, Powernomics. And he's got a wonderful, wonderful brand new book out, and you can get all 5 of his books if you go on the Harvest Institute. Now, give him that website again, Dr. Claude Anderson.
Right. Thank you, Joe. It's called, you need to go to www.powernomics.com, or you can just simply go to powernomics.com, and you can order those books on a special package up there right now. And get those books and start reading them fast, because we're in serious trouble right now.
Oh, yes, we are. And I understand that you're the best-selling black author on Amazon. I've been told that.
Yes, we are. We have the record. As a matter of fact, some lawyers checked. There's 250,000 sites around the world right now that are citing those books. And ironically, they're through Europe and Africa and in the Caribbean. And here, black folk in this city, like Detroit, they don't even buy the books and won't even read them. And I got Asians and Hispanics that are taking the books and trying to use that information to further empower themselves. And black folk don't understand that in this country, you're in a competitive relationship with immigrants. And they're not coming here to get along with you, to be your friends, or be people of color, or be they're coming here to get over you and surpass you. Let me make this one point that's critically important, particularly in your city, because right now there are international designs to make the biggest Chinatown outside of the China going to be Detroit, Michigan, and bringing in immigrants. So you're going to be an Arab town and a Chinatown. But here's the point: those people in Detroit must understand. I tried to talk about this back when I was trying to help you build a culture and an economic base in Detroit. And the city, and the 4 or 5 city council members still in that city is not dead. They are gloating in the fact that they blocked it. But immigrants coming to America, Joe, they get 5 to 6 advantages over black folk. In Detroit, they're going to have 5. They get 4 to 5 to 6 times more advantages in Detroit. For instance, blacks in Detroit, they are still branded as being slaves and hated and despised by the white population. 89 to 90% of all the whites right now, according to research, they still despise and hate black folk. 63 to 64% of all immigrants come to this country say they don't want to be associated, identified with black folk. But here's what they get. They're coming to America and get advantages. For every immigrant coming to America, they're being classified now as whites. Arabs are classified as whites. Hispanics are classified as whites, always classified up until 1970, and before they started calling themselves minorities. And American Indians are classified as whites. Now, in America, all those groups, here's what they get. They come to America, they get a point over black folk in Detroit and across the nation for being classified as whites. That's 1 step up over black folk. 2, they get a 2nd step up over black folk for being placed into a minority category. 3, they get another advantage over black folk by having come in with a culture they can relate back to their own country and build businesses in this country. 4, they get an advantage over black folk based on their religion. 5, they get advantage over black folks by having a language. They can go to the United States government and say, we want Spanish stations, we want Arab stations, and they can get those damn stations almost free. That's
now, Dr. Anderson, we've reached the end of our time. I want you to tell our people where they can get this information.
Well, again, please either go to the Harvest Institute, but primarily first go to the powernomics.com, and order those books as quick as you can. And Joanne is right on target, and she's about to star you all got in Detroit. That's why I called her on a wake-up program and say, please, Detroit, my family's there. Wake up and smell the damn coffee.
My, Dr. Claude, now he's a son of Detroit. Went to Wayne State University. I understand you went there with attorney Elliott Hall.
That's right. That's my buddy, Elliott Hall.
Praise God, praise God. Wayne State University, and he's got an earned doctorate, a PhD, and he is a prolific researcher, economist, author, speaker. He's our main man on economic empowerment, and he does not want us to be operating like we're still enslaved. It's time to wake up, Detroit. Dr. Claude Anderson, praise God for you, Dr. Anderson. We love you.
I thank you. I love you, Joe, and always remember, as long as you live, I'm still your only friend.
Dr. Claude Anderson, give our best to your wonderful wife, Joanne, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, baby. You too
all
now.
Right,
bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now. We give God all the praise. Only God is worthy to be praised. You want to remember that on tonight, the wonderful Reverend D. Alexander Bullock, David Alexander Bullock, is holding an empowerment a conference at his church. It's on LaBelle Street, just north of Hamilton. So if you get to, and you know that's in Highland Park, we want you to show up about 7 p.m. on this evening. It's going to have a room filled with millennials, filled with people that understand economic empowerment, filled with people that want to own and not just consume, want to be owners and not just patrons, want to be contributors and not just pawns in the economy of our community. So the empowerment conference taking place this evening at Greater St. Matthew's Baptist Church, and we're so grateful to Reverend David Alexander Bullock for being our host and being the leader and the great convener of this conference on this evening at 7. Greater St. Matthew's Baptist Church. You ought to be in that number. It's a good time to rise and shine and give God all the praise. Only God is worthy to be praised. Wake up, Detroit.